Fuji led the path of computational photography with animal autofocus, but they've been overtaken since by Canon, Nikon, and Sony with their animal and bird eye detection. Is Fuji ready to take back the crown of innovation when it comes to autofocus? Details coming up, but first I encourage you to subscribe and choose all notifications so you're kept informed on the latest camera gear, news, and rumors, like this story on the Fuji X-H2S. Few recall that it was actually Fujifilm that pioneered animal autofocus. They were the leader in the field, the first to market with animal autofocus in the camera FinePix F80 EXR. It worked with cats and dogs, which worked for most people, and it was aptly named Pet Detector, not to be confused with the movie Pet Detective from 1994 with Jim Carrey. So where is animal autofocus today? Well, it's not in their latest cameras, and this doesn't mean that you can't take pictures of dogs and other pets, cats, birds, insects, or birds in flight. You can. It just requires understanding the camera a whole lot more, understanding how to work with single point or wide area or the continuous tracking functions of Fuji cameras like the Fuji X-T4. But it's not like Sony or Canon. I gotta be honest with you, having shot with the R5 for a few years and getting that animal eye detection is truly incredible. And when I first got it, sure, I tried it on people, then I tried it on animals, dogs and cats, but then I pushed the technology. I wanted to see how well it really worked. And I tried shooting insects like grasshoppers. It performed quite well. Now with insects, it was kind of a hit and miss. And then over the years, we got updates allowing vehicle detection, locking onto the headlights, locking onto the driver if the driver's visible, or locking onto the driver's helmet. And it really makes you really happy because it's able to nail the autofocus of these challenging subjects many, many times. But nailing animal autofocus or animal eye detection or bird eye detection is a bit of a challenge with today's modern Fuji cameras, if we're going to be honest with ourselves. We want to see an improvement in the animal eye detection, animal eye autofocus, bird eye detection. And of course, we want to see all that other stuff that the other cameras have, such as vehicle detection. Who is it? OM Systems, OM1. They can do helicopters, boats. They can do everything but UFOs. And it's a pretty amazing autofocus system. So we've got a lot of cameras that do really well. We've got Canon, Sony, and Nikon. And I think that's what we're kind of hoping for with the Fuji X-H2 and the X-H2S. Thanks to our friend Andrea at Fuji Rumors, we have trusty information. The Fujifilm X-H2S will offer animal and object autofocus tracking. And that's great. It's good to know that Fujifilm is improving the autofocus system. Many of you think that the Fujifilm X-H2S is going to be the Canon R7 killer. It's going to be better than the R7. I hate this term killer because these are passive devices. They accept light. They do anything but act aggressively. So while many of you might think it's going to be the killer of the R7, I think really what we're getting at here is that many think that the Fujifilm X-H2S, which we're expecting to see May the 31st announced at the Fujifilm X Summit, to be much better than the R7 in many aspects. From what we know of the sensor alone already, the Fuji has a 26 megapixel backside illuminated stacked sensor, according to rumors. The R7, on the other hand, doesn't have BSI or stacked, and it has a 24.2 megapixel sensor. 24.2 or 26 megapixels to me is perfectly fine and produces really good results. I think it's the perfect file size, the frame size, megapixels, whatever you want to call it, for the ordinary filmmaker, photographer, for a hobbyist. But the autofocus system, that really, really matters. And Canon has a very good autofocus system. It has animal detection, it has bird detection, bird eye detection, animal eye detection, human eye detection. It can track vehicles. And you know what? It does a pretty good job of tracking other objects as well. And its continuous autofocus, its dual pixel autofocus system is very, very good. And of course, you've got Sony and Nikon that are doing just as well. And I think Sony and Nikon are really considered the best, but Nikon's caught up significantly with the Z9. And I'd say those three are really the best when it comes to continuous autofocus of subject and object tracking. So having an improvement in the Fujifilm X-H2S is, I consider, to be one of those key capabilities that will have you looking at the Fujifilm X-H2S as being one of the kings, one of the flagship APS-C mirrorless cameras on the marketplace. Now, I'm not here to trounce on the Canon EOS R7. Canon does a good job at building cameras, and yes, while their cripple hammer does seem to abound at times, they still produce very good cameras. And the metrics that I offer to prove this, well, they have 48% market share, both DSLR and mirrorless interchangeable lens cameras, and that's a significant amount. 50% of the population say they want to go with Canon, and Canon must be doing something right for that to happen. So Fujifilm, Sony, Nikon, and others are looking at, well, what is Canon doing and how can we do it better? And I'm wondering how the Fujifilm X-H2S can look at the R7, can look at what Canon's offering and others and say, how can we be better? And this is one of those capabilities that certainly leads us to a better camera, better subject and object tracking, animal eye detection, bird eye detection, continuous tracking, not just for stills, but for video as well. An accurate, reliable autofocus system matters. It really, really does. Look at Panasonic and their Lumix cameras, some of the best cameras on the market. In fact, when it comes to video, I would say they are offering the best solutions out there, but they've fallen behind in the autofocus system. They've fallen behind in the autofocus system, instead of focusing on video capabilities, resolutions and frame rates, and improving video quality, and leaving autofocus as well further down on the list. And when it comes to video, contrast detect autofocus, their depth from defocus autofocus system just isn't there, and they know that. They're getting the feedback. And I think when they replace their current autofocus system with a face detect autofocus system, they're going to see their sales explode because their video capabilities are absolutely wonderful. So seeing Fuji improving upon their object and subject autofocus tracking of humans, pets, dogs, you name it, birds, I think it's only going to help them sell more cameras. It's only going to help them get better reviews and make you as a Fuji owner so much happier with the camera. We're just a couple of weeks away from getting the announcement of the Fujifilm X-H2S announcement, and hopefully everything stays in place that's going to happen, because we've seen this many times. The Canon EOS R7 was supposed to be announced back in March, and now that's been pushed to June or July. With this current marketplace, anything could happen. So fingers crossed, March the 31st, the Fujifilm X Summit. But now I want to take you a little bit behind the scenes. And I'm a little bit embarrassed by what happened yesterday. I had taken one of my family films I'd created back in 2016, brought it into my Mac studio, and went to open it up. And I saw something that just really absolutely shocked me. Every single clip, except for the audio, every single clip said missing content, missing file. I can't remember exactly what the message is with Final Cut, but you see a red image instead of your video clip with missing and like a yellow caution sign. And I was just devastated. Like, how could this be? There's no way I could have deleted this. And I looked at the file size of the drive, because you know you're in trouble when you look at the file size of the drive and you see it much less than where it should be. And the file size was right where it should be. So I started exploring the package contents, looking to see if anything had moved. And I couldn't figure anything out. And I was starting to get frustrated. And I didn't want to open up any of the other libraries that I had. I was wondering, well, as soon as I opened this, Final Cut said, hey, look, this is an older library. Do you want to update it? So I said, yes. I wondered, could the library update process be a problem? You see, these archive files, I don't open them very often, and sometimes they could be created on a much older version of Final Cut. So I started to panic a little bit. I wasn't yelling, I wasn't screaming, I wasn't throwing things around the room, but it was one of those where you get shocked and it almost just sets you back a few feet, where you're going, oh boy, this can't be good. So I called Apple and I asked them to help me out. I explained the problem to them and they started checking stuff. Yep, the files aren't there. And I kept thinking, okay, well, where are they supposed to be? Because I couldn't, and I knew how to do this, but somehow under the situation, I couldn't remember how to do it. I couldn't remember how to find the actual location. It's kind of crazy. Well, Apple helped me with that. And then as soon as I saw the location, he said, yeah, you see volumes there? That means it was an external drive. And I saw the name, it was called Final Cut Pro. And all of a sudden, deep back in the recesses of the warehouse of my memory, a light came on saying, wait a minute, Final Cut Pro. That's the name of a drive you used many years ago that I've stopped using. It was an old hard drive, and I don't use that anymore. Ran down to the basement, grabbed this old hard drive, plugged it into the computer, and then all of a sudden, all those red images of missing file disappeared and everything came back to life. And it was one of those situations where, it's another case of failing memory, where you're missing key pieces of what you thought to be your own reality. Another case of growing old, and I can't believe how I could have forgotten that. For 2 years, I've been working with the Canon EOS R5 shooting 4K video, and I have a completely different workflow. I'm working with SSDs. Everything has to be stored within the library. So that way, if I move things around, I don't have to worry about content being misplaced or anything. And I'd forgotten about that. And all of a sudden, in that moment, I had completely forgotten some of my skills about my, basic troubleshooting skills. Well, where are the files supposed to be, and try to find that location. At the end of the day, I didn't lose anything. I found my files and I felt a sense of relief. But one of the strange things, now I knew this when I was going to call Apple, they would ask, well, do you have a backup? And I did. And I grabbed that backup. It's an old spinning drive, an 8 terabyte, brought it up, hooked it in. I had the exact same problem. I couldn't figure out why. And that's when I ended up calling Apple. But the one thing I was shocked is on that backup, all the contents of that Final Cut drive with all my content, all my files, everything, I hadn't copied over to the 8 terabyte. So I spent the next 3 hours copying that 1.14 terabytes over to the backup 8 terabyte drive. So not only do I have a backup of my library and cache files and all that, but I have a backup of the files itself. So at the end of the day, I got my files, but I also realized there was a problem with my backup. I didn't have all the content, so I backed up all my content. So now at least on my backup, should anything happen on my computers or my other drives, I have a full backup of all my historical data, which is very, very important. So huge stress release there. But yeah, just sharing with you a little bit that goes on behind the scenes and one of the problems of aging. But now one last message I want to leave you with. If you came here to this video because you love the Fujifilm X-H2S, or you just love camera technologies in general and you want to see what other camera companies are working on, make sure you subscribe, but choose all notifications. It's by choosing all notifications that you'll get updates of my latest videos. So as soon as I publish a video, you get a notification from YouTube saying, hey, I put out a new video. And not only does it help my channel grow, but it makes sure that you're up to date on the latest camera news, rumors, and information. But that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again soon.